Aloha. My name is Heipua again, and I wanted to go back to my first clip and just remind you a couple things about my theoretical framework that I chose to study the 9 tenured Native Hawaiian women faculty at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. One of the reasons I chose the post-structural feminist frame is because I really wanted to look at women's issues. And as you know, a qualitative study allows you to look at women's experiences and women's ways of knowing. And I thought the post-structural feminist framework would really help me to look at some of the issues that these Native Hawaiian women faculty were experiencing in higher education. I also looked at the Indigenous theory because I was really concerned about looking at issues of Indigenous people, particularly colonization, the effects of colonization and oppression. The Native Hawaiian people are the indigenous people of Hawaii, and of course, as you know, they have suffered tremendous amounts of effects from colonization. So that's the reasons why I chose those two particular frames. I would caution you, however, about perhaps narrowing it down to one theoretical framework because it becomes a little unwieldy to try and look at your study through two different lenses. In terms of my data collection, the reason I chose storytelling is because it really melds really well with the Hawaiian culture. Hawaiian culture has been passed on orally through storytelling, which we know as mo'olelo. And so I thought it would be very appropriate to learn about these women's experiences and have them share their story. These women have traditionally been marginalized and silenced in the academy, and I wanted to hear their voices, and I wanted them to share their stories with me. And so Indigenous culture is a very circular, holistic type of culture. And so what I did with their stories is I wrote a mo'olelo. I wrote a story in an Indigenous framework about each woman's experiences. And I wrote it in a circular fashion, which is the Indigenous way of thinking, beginning with a important, critical event that occurred in their lifetime, and then weaving through the various events in their life, and then coming back to that point. And so it's a very circular type of a story. My theme for my study is a voyaging theme. I looked at my own experiences as a tenured woman faculty in the community colleges, and I looked at that as a voyage going through academe. And so in that voyaging theme, it was really important for me to figure out how I'm going to name these 9 women and preserve their confidentiality and their anonymity. And so what I did was, in line with the voyaging theme, is I chose the names of hoku. Hoku are stars, and these were the stars that were used by the hokulea, the Hawaiian voyaging canoe, on its maiden voyage to Tahiti. And so each woman had the opportunity to select a hoku, a pseudonym, based on the name of a Hawaiian star that they would be known by in my study. I selected 9 women out of a total population of 14. So this is a very, very small sample. So when you're using a small sample, you want to be really careful that you protect these participants' identity, confidentiality, so that they cannot be identified by their discipline, their department, or community. And so every woman in my study is known by a hoku, or a Hawaiian star. The other thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is the artifacts. That in Dave's study, he talked about how he used artifacts for people to tell their stories. And in my study, the women did the same thing. The first artifacts they selected were to describe their academic experiences, and the second set of artifacts were to describe their tenure experiences. One of the most unusual artifacts I received was a metal bra that was attached to a metal frame. And the participant referred to this as tits of steel. And of course, there's a story behind it. As an undergraduate, she was going through some tremendous stress, and she was under so much pressure that she was about ready to drop out of school. And she was attending a meeting, and she was very stressed out about what was going on in this meeting. And so during the break, she stepped out into the hallway, and one of the professors walked out with her and said, "You know, honey, if you're going to be a feminist in the academy, you're going to need tits of steel." And this image just stuck with her. And sometime later, at a craft fair, she saw this metal frame with this metal bra, and she called it the Tits of Steel. And it hangs in her office today, and it reminds her that she needs to be tough, not only as a woman, but as a Native Hawaiian woman, and really stand up for what she believes in. Each one of my women also had the opportunity to do member checking. Member checking is where once you have completed your transcript and you've proofread it carefully and you've done the editing, you then send it back to your participants. In my case, I sent them back both the transcript as well as the story that I created about each person. And so each woman had an opportunity to review and edit, make any corrections she chose to with her transcript as well as her story, which I call a mo'olelo. And that's really important because in many cases, I misunderstood what she said. I may have had the dates, the chronology a little bit mixed up. So it's really important to go back to your participants and have them check and verify that you've done an accurate job in telling this story. Lastly, I would like to say, when you're doing a study, you really want to be passionate about what you're doing. And as a Tahitian American student, tenured faculty member, I've always been passionate about this. And you need that passion in order to maintain your energy, your focus, because it's going to be a long haul. And I wish you the best of luck. Aloha.